Making the time 6 o'clock right here on HGG Radio, reaching you at the highest mountain and the lowest valley. At this time, you're now invited to listen to the program Expressions from the Heart with your host, Sharon Laumen. Listen and be blessed.
That you found any time at all to drop by this evening. You are indeed a very busy businesswoman and mother. Thank you for being here. Well done.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Our pleasure. Our next very special guest is our very own First Lady, Corrine Smith. She is an ordained evangelist in the Pentecostal Assemblies of the World Church organization. First Lady Smith has an awesome ministry in song. She is the women's president at Kingdom Life Ministries, as well president for the Minister and Deacon Wives Auxiliary for the Canada District Council PAW. Sister Corrine Lady Corrine is a certified medical administrator and holds a bachelor's degree in Christian evangelism at the Cornerstone Academy of Biblical Studies. First Lady Smith is the wife of our Bishop, Dr. Barrington E. Smith. Together, they have 3 beautiful children. She is a supportive wife and a caring mother who is loved and respected by those who know her. I can absolutely attest to this, that she is indeed all of this and much more. She is loved and a wonderful example to women everywhere and definitely an encourager. I feel humbled and honored to have received a yes from Lady Corrine. When I called her a week ago, she was at the salon and she didn't hesitate to say, yes, I would be happy to stop by. So Lady Corrine Smith, thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the call and this opportunity to share.
Thank you so much. And of course, we've managed to once again entice my sister, Lady Marilyn McGreer, my sister, and she's agreed to come again this week and as often as her schedule will permit. She has been such an inspiration to me and to the other ladies, and she has so far graciously said yes. Thank you, Lady McGreer.
Thank you for having me. It has been my pleasure.
Thank you so much. Well, I am speechless. We are in the company of so many great women of God. Sister Jen, what can I say about you? You are a faithful friend. Through thick and thin, and I have not known you for so long, but you've been there for me. So I salute you, Sister Jen. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
You know, I would probably not be doing this, but for the support that God has afforded me. My pastor has interrogated me and tormented me, but I am grateful because the impact.
I'm going to say it's a feeling that's hard to describe, but it's a strong feeling.
So it's a feeling that's hard to describe, and it is a strong one. Okay, so would you agree that it is an intense feeling of deep affection that is indescribable? Marilyn?
I would say yes. A deep feeling.
Deep feeling. Okay. Mm-hmm. A deep feeling that is difficult to describe. Anybody else?
Love it's an overpowering pull towards someone. Again, if we're looking at the erotic love, the passionate love, falling in love with somebody, they just captivate you, where every ounce and fiber of your day is thinking about them. That love is very powerful, and it pulls you in. So yeah. if we're speaking about that love that love that we've had or fallen in love or first experience of what love is, then yes, we can be captivated by it.
Wow. That's deep. You know, I guess it's one of those things that's difficult to describe because a room filled with women have very little to say. That is amazing. Jennifer, Shauna.
I know. Well, I think I look at love differently now, especially after having my child. But it used to be a feeling for me, but I remember the first time I heard that poem, I think it's from Corinthians, the love is patient, love is kind, love doesn't brag, like all of these things. I remember seeing that years ago, and I was in a relationship at the time where that wasn't true. And I remember thinking, oh, and it occurred to me, we weren't in love. And that's love to me. I think it's when you have a child, like when I had my son, I realized that was love, like that. But I don't know that I had experienced love that way until I had my child. That makes sense.
Oh.
I felt it, but I didn't get it back maybe.
Ah.
I guess we have to identify, the different types of love.
Yes, we do. We do. And now I know that this is not really fair to any of you because you don't have the conversation that I had with the listeners. You weren't privy to that. But I did point out that, yes, there are different types of love, but we're talking about why it would make sense to say it is blind. Because agape love and philia, and the other one, I forgot what it's called, nobody says that's blind. Mm-hmm. Yes. But the erotica love, that's what people are finding it difficult to label. And so is it because of that, they're saying, well, it's I don't know, it's just blind. Like we can't describe it.
And I'm going to jump in to say, yes, I would agree. And I thought that was the type of love you were talking about because you said love is blind. So Shauna talked about the love of a child. So that obviously is a bit different, than love is blind. That type of love is blind, is towards someone, perhaps in my definition, I'm going to say of the opposite sex, because I know that there are some that have love towards the same sex. But as faith believers, it's male and female. And so the love is blind is, you get that kind of a response and you feel something on the inside. You hear that person's name and something comes over you. And what is that something? That's what we're trying to describe as love.
Okay. All right. That's fair. Anybody else?
The thought that love is blind is I believe it's a thought of not seeing the flaws of a person. Sometimes we see this, and I think maybe because we watch a lot of things on TV, the Hollywood perception, and you fall in love with this person, and there's all this music all of a sudden. Sorry, but I did not experience any music playing in my moments of, and all of this wonderful things that they have. But I believe that what they're talking about is the fact that we don't see the flaws, or we don't want to see the flaws. Sometimes there's things that are staring us in the face about this person that we want to love them and dismiss other things about them that is not lovely. Okay. And when we get to that point where we see the unloveliness, then we will say, okay, well, we were blinded. Were we blinded, or wasn't always there? Have we made the decision to deceive ourselves, or are we being deceived? Is the person hiding who they really are, or who they really are is there and we're deceiving ourselves?
Okay, so because you went there, I'm going to go there as well. So Rabbi Julius Gordon, I found this online, by the way, said this: love is not blind. It sees more and not less. But because it sees more, it is willing to see less. But what I call his disclaimer, he then says, once your head takes over, because apparently in the beginning it's not your head, it's your heart, you start to become more aware of the traits you ignored in the beginning of your relationship. So that is in keeping with what you've just described. And I think this is a great place for me to insert something that I wrote yesterday. And I wrote this yesterday after work. I came home from work and I sat in my chair and I just started to write in my book of thoughts. And then something just dropped into my head. Write a poem, Sharon. So I did. And I think I'll just read it now. Thank you for sharing, by the way, Lady Smith. For every woman blinded by love, a poem by Sharon Laumen. I once fell blind in love and didn't even know that when I hit the floor, I loved yet even more. I gave myself away. For this I vowed to stay. I live for love I live, and I would not be swayed. With passion at my side, I handed in my pride. It robbed me of my eyes with words which canceled strife. I couldn't truly see the things befallen me, the brokenness, the pain, so lonely, unrestrained. Tomorrow will be better, you promised to amend. Oh, leave me not alone, you say, my lover and my friend. But others at my door did constantly implore to waken from my dream, my fantasy, my war. I sent them all away. For this true love, I'll stay. So leave me yet alone. I smile and softly.
My husband does a lot of premarital counseling, and seeing it from this perspective as a pastor's wife and so forth, you ask questions before people are getting married and so forth. And you will find that when questions are being asked, if people are being honest with their answers, again, goes back to whether we're deliberately trying to deceive or cover who we are. But there's times where people say, okay, well, I'll deal with that when I come to that bridge. And that's often the case. I believe there's indications of who the person is, and you have to decide whether you're going to love them. I was speaking to someone once, and there was something I saw, and it said, if somebody tells you who they are, believe them. So if somebody shows you the bad that they are, even for a moment, believe it, be cautious. And I go back to this Little Red Riding Hood. Why did she spend so much time questioning the wolf dressed up as grandma?
She recognized something.
Right? Grandma, what big eyes you have and ears you have and all of that. The deception is right there. Girl, run.
But that's the point, though. They say hindsight is 20/20. What does that mean?
It means we see what we want.
Running while you're in it. Sorry?
We see what we want to see, I think. And often I think it's tied to a lesson we might need to learn. Or, if we're being honest, it until it means something, it doesn't mean anything. But then when it does mean something, that's when we have the true, like for me, it's not always, like there was things I I didn't, like, in hindsight, like you said, it's 2020, but at the time I didn't know what I know now. So it was, I saw what I thought that meant. So I think we interpret things based on our previous experience too. And sometimes when you have different experiences, then you change your beliefs,
Exactly.
I guess, and you see more.
That is so true. And unfortunately, that happens when sometimes, you've made a decision that is life changing, and you can't reverse it. Like, you can't, just look in the rearview mirror and say, oh, I better go the other way and change the outcome. And Shauna, this is sort of where I think you might want to bring up the point that you shocked me with last week when you made that statement, because that was so profound to me. Did you want to share that with us?
Well, I think it was something along the lines of, because, and I've been in that position too, like, it's tempting sometimes. You'll hear people say, like, they all blame God, like, why wasn't God there? Why? And I think the conversation was around free choice, like, God gave us free will and choices. And I think that what I think is, it doesn't mean we're free of consequences. Like, you will have free will to make your own choices and make your own decisions, but there are consequences to those decisions. And sometimes they're good and sometimes they're not so good. But I think it all comes down to part of a lesson we were here to learn. We were meant to have that experience so that we don't turn on the blinders and not see what's there that might be potentially harmful down the road.
Thank you for that. Jen, did you want to go ahead, and Sister Jen, and go ahead with your
Yes,
response?
please. I just have a thought, and the subject is love blind. They say love is blind. Could this be a temporary insanity moment, that stage? It could be.
Yeah.
Because many times we go into relationships and we see so many things that we never see before, and you're like, oh my God, is this for real? That's just a thought. It could be just a temporary stage.
But okay. So what I heard somebody say earlier today, I'm not sure where I saw it or read it or something, but it was that, okay, so we all fall into this euphoric place where we have this intense feeling towards a person, an individual, and it's high and it's overwhelming. You're swimming in it and you cannot see the forest for the trees. But life is real as well. And so things wane, not that you can't stand the person anymore, because everyone's got flaws, but things like, if you go into a hot bath, it's going to get cool at some point. So you've got to heat it back up, right? And so when you say temporary, what do you mean by temporary? Is it temporary insanity? Are you calling it insanity? I think you said insanity.
Yes, I did.
I might agree.
Yes. Reason for that, why I said that, is because there's different stage that the relationship goes through. The falling in love, the first stage that you're seeing everything rosy. But as the relationship evolves, that's when people, you move from state like that honeymoon stage to the reality. Then it takes on a different form. You begin to see the person true color. Things that it's like you fall in an unconscious state to consciousness. Then that's when the real life begins. Then you begin to realize if you're truly in love or if it was an infatuation, because then you have to realize that your love take on a different form. If you're a Christian, then you begin to realize that, hey, you're here to serve. Your relationship then take a different form, where you no longer serve yourself. Pardon?
I'm sorry, I will let you finish. But you just kind of triggered a thought. But before I respond to that, I see Shauna has her hand up.
Did I?
Yeah, it's up.
Oh, sorry, I don't know how. Accident.
Feel free to jump in, Lady McGreer.
Yes, I'm thinking about what's being said, and I am agreeing. That you're choosing to be blind to what you see, as I think that Lady Smith said. Don't be deceived, don't fall for the deception. But remember, first impressions are often very lasting, and everyone puts the first, a good foot forward. So they do things that are pleasing, like he might open the car door for you, and you're just so flattered because this has never happened before, and so that and I'm just so excited. He likes me. You might even go from liking, he loves me. And maybe there's other things there, but you're choosing to not dwell there because you don't want to. So we make those kind of choices. I thought it was interesting what Sister Jen said about infatuation, because let's go there for a bit. How is that different from love? I'm flattered then, or how do I feel? I'm infatuated by this individual. That's an interesting point too. I was just musing on it and just wondering how that relates to us at the beginning and as our relationship progresses. Are we still infatuated?
And that's a great point too, because I my metaphor to that would be life itself. We are born and we're in our infant stage, and then we are growing and we blossom and we get to bloom and we get to a point where we never look so good. And then we start to go the other way because we're meant to. So is love likened onto that? It starts, maybe you think it's infatuation, but it could be real. And how do you know? How would you know? And life is a cycle. And being real in life, it's even a new job or a new dress or whatever it is, the excitement that you feel, we feel this great elation, but then after a while we forget that it's in the closet and we go for another one. It's like, this is still here. And sometimes people's relationships are like that. It's like, hello, I'm still here. Oh yeah, right. Mm-hmm. It can happen.
So true.
It's real life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, just to quickly jump back to this poem that I wrote, it's not to be negative, but to me, it's a representation of how blinded and willing sometimes we are to stay miserable because the dress is old. And Sister Corrine, if you don't mind me saying, you shared with us before we had the formal conversation that, did you want to share that what you do in terms of, keeping things moving? And I thought it was amazing what you shared with us.
Well, love, it grows and you have to feed it, right? You have to feed love. And one thing that my husband and I do, our schedules are very busy, but we have the downtime where we spend time with each other, just hanging around. We have date nights every now and again. When we had the pandemic and we couldn't go much places, it was going to the gas station that was a great time to escape and go to the car wash together, just spending that time. And the growth of love is this. Once you're growing in love, and when you see the flaws, the reality, and this is when we're talking about love and not infatuation, because if infatuation just blooms and comes up and then it's gone, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
But loving somebody and seeing the flaws, and then going back to Bible a bit where it says charity covers a multitude of sin. We're not talking about sin in terms of the sin, but we're just talking about flaws. You love this person despite their flaws, and you're still cherishing those moments. I heard this wedding vow, and it says that when we're still old and our hands are wrinkly, we'll be still holding each other's hand, arms in arms, and that's the sort of love that we're talking about, the one that will take you through all the stages. We're talking about the fresh love, the growing love, the painful love, because love can be painful, because as we're adjusting and finding ourselves, and our spouse or that person we love is finding themselves, and we're trying to blend, that can be very painful. But if you're loving, you're transforming together to make this perfect match. And even if the shape, it doesn't look all that good, but it's blended. It's just like when you're baking something, you put all the ingredients together. And mine may come out not looking, but all the ingredients are in it. It may not have the right shape or all that stuff, but all the ingredients are there. So yeah, we have to feed love, spend the time together, nurture it. If it's love, nurture it.
Okay, so let me ask this question, and I'm throwing this out to everybody. Now, I was looking at some biblical examples of unions, marriages, and I couldn't find any where a man actually asked for the hand in marriage. And if I'm wrong, please correct me, because I probably just missed it. But it was an arrangement. It was somebody saying, find this for my son, or, it was a connection that was already known, in other words. And there are arranged marriages today. Is that built around that feeling of euphoria, or, whew, I can't breathe because I'm so in love? If it's an arranged marriage, and I'm kind of shifting a little bit on purpose, is that kind of marriage just built around duty, or is it just custom, or is it what is it? Because if we're saying that love, and that was why I asked the question in the first place, what is love by your definition? And most people that were willing to say anything said it's an intense feeling. It's a feeling that you can't describe. So if it's an arranged marriage, what do they feel? Anyone?
So I'm going to respond. I want to just respond to what Lady Smith said. In all of that she said, what I believe I heard was intentionality. So her husband and her are very intentional. In other words, it's not something that just happens out of nowhere. It's planned, right? So that at a certain time of the evening, this is their downtime together. And I think that is so beautiful. May I say that my husband and I, we do that too. We find a time that we can be alone together so that we can connect our thoughts, our spirits, and whatever. And I think that is part of love, and there's growth in that, because at the beginning of your relationship, it's new. You're just learning about each other. And as you learn about each other, I believe you learn about yourself. We've been married for 38 years. We don't have a perfect marriage, but we've grown together, right? Being married when we were in our 20s, and now here we are in our 60s. And I would like to believe, and I think if my husband was here, he probably would agree that, our love has taken on a different look. So whatever that might be. Now, what you read, Sister Sharon, that poem, and you're asking that question about arranged marriage. I mean, if we Bible days, they did that, right? Abraham sent his servant out to find a bride for his wife and others as well. Whether they were looking to see whether or not that person was compatible. They know, the rules of the house, or the custom, the traditions, and all these different things. So is that person going to be a fit? And so, when we as leaders talk to people, counsel people, try to encourage them, those are the type of things we look for, we listen for, we pray about, because I do believe with the help of the Lord, I mean, even in the world, if you're not compatible, I mean, let's face it, they want to marry someone that's in their same social economic class, right? We can look at that from a racial/cultural kind of thing. All of those things come into play when you're choosing. So certainly arranged marriages, and there's other ethnic groups that do that, even as you were saying today, because we had a couple in our church that told us that our marriage was arranged. My oldest sister knew what I was like, so she found a lady friend that would fit. And I thought, wow, is that the way to go?
But that's the problem. I'm sorry, but that's a problem, because if you go back to the original conversation, the original thought was what it feels like. Now, that's why I'm asking, how is it to feel? How do you get that feeling when it's an arranged? Like, you're looking for, it's not based on economics. Love is not based on economics. And I mean, I'm gonna be controversial with this, because if we are saying that love is a state of being that we cannot explain, we just know, you feel an affinity toward, you feel, Sister Green said, you feel pulled in a direction towards a person, then an arranged marriage, I'm asking, how do you qualify? How does that compensate for that? Do they grow to feel that way? How do you know you even like the person? You don't know that. It's going on a blind date. You don't know. And I mean, if it's an arranged marriage, it's not like you have an option to say, oh, I didn't like it, so I'm going away, like a blind date. And then the question is, am I to look for somebody? Or is someone supposed to look for me or you? Or should we just leave it to chance? And what Sister Green said was, there was a pull there. So you both felt it. So how is an arranged marriage okay? You bring in economics, but how does that qualify as love? Jen.
Sister Jen has her hand up, but I want to say that.
I'm calling her.
Yeah.
I'm calling her.
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
I just want to share a story. I remember many years ago, I knew a Jewish couple, right? And the man, his wife had Alzheimer's. And I'm going to bring up this story because I want to believe love is more than a feelings. And this lady, she still remember him, but I see what real love is. And this man would get up every day and he'll go to the nursing home and he'll sit beside her, and he was devoted. So I want to believe that love, it is something much more than our feelings, because if you married someone and it so happened that this person have Alzheimer's, they cannot function in certain way with you again, they cannot take care of you, you're going to be taking care of them. So your feeling change. But there's the love, it is so powerful, it is so divine that it go beyond the earthly feeling of what we do by feelings. It is divine. So love is something much more powerful than feeling.
But there is feeling.
Absolutely. But the feeling.
There has to be feeling, yes.
There's got to be a feeling.
Yeah, there has to be. But the feeling grows with time. I think, as someone says, love does grow. So, I mean.
But wouldn't you say that feeling comes and goes?
That is why even greater than that is a commitment to love.
Right. There you go. And I would agree with that.
I like that.
It's a commitment. You've made that commitment to love.
Right. But at the beginning, are you not feeling that you love this person, and that feeling changes into commitment then? Would you say that?
I would.
So what would somebody say to Shauna now? Because Shauna shared with us that she's never had a particular experience. She said that once she gave birth to her child, then she felt, she said, this is what love feels like. So how would we say to someone like Shauna, how would she know that this is love? Because what we're talking about is once you're in it, you do this, you do that, you do this. We're not talking about once you're in it. we're talking about how do you know that is it? What can we say to her? What would you say to her?
Well, isn't that a different type of love? The love of a child as opposed to
No.
the love.
No, we're not talking about that. We already established that. We're talking about the love that you feel towards meeting someone, falling for them, because we're talking about blind love. Oh my God. Whew. This person, somebody earlier said, I think about this man or this woman 24/7. How she's not felt that. So
I felt that. I felt
sorry.
that. I haven't. I think I felt that, and that's what I have. But I think that can also be mistaken for passion. Like passion can feel like that, but I think love is reciprocal. Like if you, like I felt love for someone, I don't know that I had that same love back, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I also like go back to the arranged marriage. I've not been arranged. That's not happened for me, but I have a friend who that was her case. And she actually did grow. She didn't want to get married in an arranged marriage, and it happened. And she told me that she experienced that unexpectedly, where after some time she developed these like feelings she couldn't explain for her husband. And at the beginning, it changed. Like she didn't want that at first. And then she developed these feelings of he was not what she expected. And she had these feelings of like overwhelming love towards him that she couldn't explain, and passion, which was interesting.
Yes, it is interesting. Now, I shared earlier with my personal story about a friend of mine. And I don't know if anybody remembers. I don't know if I told you or not, but I'll just say it now. She was approached by a gentleman in her youth, and he wanted to get to know her, and she was very offended by it, and she insulted him. And she told him in no uncertain terms, this is not an option for you. And that was the end of that. And then many years afterwards, and in a different country, their paths crossed again. And long story short, she's married to him. But her reason was God told her, that's your husband. Mm. So in a way, that's kind of like an arranged marriage because, but I mean, she's very much in love with this man. I know them. I was surprised. I was like, that's how you met him? She said, yeah. I mean, I didn't even know. So to me, that's blind.
That is.
That's blind. Like she had no inclination towards him. So what I'm thinking, ladies, is this is a very subjective topic, and there's no real answer to that question, except for maybe it's based on personal experience. Sister Elaine, welcome.
Welcome. I just got on, Sister Sharon.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
Feel free to jump in. I don't know if you've heard any of this.
Not very much. So I will just continue to listen because I don't know what I missed already.
Okay. Well, you're in the company of some first ladies and myself and my boss and Sister Jen.
I'll just keep listening. And if I can jump in, I will. If I don't,
okay.
Then. Okay.
Awesome. So, I have another question. If you have time, there's a saying, all is well in love, or all is fair. I think is it all is fair or all is well? I think it's all is
fair.
I think it's all is. Yeah, I think it's all is fair in love and war. What does that mean? Does anybody want to take a stab at that?
I don't think I've heard that one before. Say it again. All is
fair in love and war. So they're basically saying, whatever happens when you're in love, it's fair. And whatever happens when there's war, it's fair.
Okay.
The way that I interpret that personally, if nobody knows, I mean, not that I know, but here's what I thought. If it's true that love is blind and the consequences of choosing freely based on what Shauna said is what the consequences is. Whatever the consequence is for making that decision based on your free will, it's fair. You made that decision and you don't get to choose the outcome. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think the outcome, often we think because we want something, it's going to work out, but we don't always see working out as equaling not getting what we want. So often for me, it's been a big learning for me has been sometimes things work out even when you don't think they do. So even if you've encountered war, it's probably been terrible, but you've walked away with something that was, if you've survived it, you've grown, you've learned, you've overcome something. Like no one's going to get out of this life alive or without being through something. And I think that just because it didn't work out the way we thought doesn't mean it didn't work out. It worked out the way it was meant to. We probably had a lesson to learn or an experience to have, and we probably grew and were better for it. But sometimes we might see it as that was a fail, but it really wasn't. It was a growth. It just didn't go the way we thought. But who are we to think it should go a certain way? Right.
I understand what you're saying. Basically, we're meant to get to a destination, but this is the way this is the path that we took to get there. And in so doing, on the way, there was a lesson to be learned, and hopefully we learned it. No guarantee that you did, is what you're really saying.
You'll do it over if you didn't.
Yeah, I've heard that as well, that if you don't learn the lesson, then God puts you through it again until you do get it.
Yeah, I think you get the test and then you get the lesson.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I was also thinking about the Bible character, ladies, the Bible character, the two sisters, Rachel and Leah.
Yes.
Would we consider that an arranged marriage?
Well, Leah wasn't the one that Jacob wanted, was it?
Well, the father, Laban, was given the eldest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he loved Rachel, but he was given Leah. So do you see that as an arranged marriage? Is that what you're asking? Or
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because Leah was not the one he wanted. Yeah. But he loved Rachel. He was willing to work 7 more years. It didn't matter to him because that's what his heart was saying. That's who he wanted.
So that's why I'm asking it now, because based on what Shauna was saying about, he had a choice to make. And the consequence would be, you can, but you have to do this first. So in a way, Shauna, what you're saying, what you said initially about not being able to choose the consequence in that particular, for instance, I'm kind of questioning it as well. Do you see where I'm going with that?
Yes.
Because the consequence he knew, but it's not always that way. Normally it's not. It's I've got free will. Or did he even actually have free will? He chose Rachel from the feeling that he had. I know it's more than a feeling we're saying, but he had a feeling towards Rachel for whatever reason, I'm not sure, but that's who he wanted. But he was willing to make a sacrifice in order to get what he wanted.
Mm-hmm. Right, that's right. Yeah. So, someone said to me once that you need to fight for your love. Jacob, I guess in a way, said, okay, like you're saying, consequences, because his choice was Rachel, as we know, but he was given Leah, and he just thought, okay. So in a way, he kind of like said, okay, I'm willing to do this. I'm going to fight for this. And he did. He worked and worked and worked until it was time for him to obtain, his love prize.
If that's the case, and we go with the scripture that says charity to suffereth long, he was willing to endure and wait for that time.
Right.
And a lot of us, sometimes I think we give up too quickly. We're not willing to fight. We're not willing to seek the Lord, ask the Lord questions about how I should respond. Sometimes we have to adjust ourselves to get the best from our spouse or from that person that we love. I know sometimes I've asked the Lord to change me, direct me. What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to speak? What am I, because when you love and you want the best results, because choices have consequences, and we want the best results from our choices. So we have to go to the ultimate lover, the lover of our soul, the one who loves us beyond measure, to understand love, that we can love others around us when they're not lovely. Because that's the hardest thing to do, is to love somebody. We're saying that love is, the thought about love is blind. And we fall in love if we're walking blindly. My husband says, I don't fall in love. I stand in love because I'm going in it eyes wide open. Right? And that's his philosophy. So the truth of the matter is that we, as I said earlier, it's intentional. It's a commitment to love, right? A commitment is even greater. You need more than just love alone and all. You need to be committed to it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate all of these contributions, whoever are making them. And I don't really want to stray from the initial question about, and I don't think we are, but it's easy to do that, right? But the initial question is, the real question is it blind? Because I think, I don't know if it's been answered or if we actually know how to answer it, but it depends on what we think blind means in terms of something as abstract as love, that you can't actually pick it up and say, this of course is blind, it doesn't have eyes, because love, is not a tangible, you can't feel it. But whether or not it's blind is the real question. And what does that really mean? Okay, so you mentioned, Mr. Green, that your husband says, I stand in love. So it's intentional, but what you don't know is on my piece of paper was the next question I was going to throw out, which is men. Do men have the same sentiments of unintentional, I just fell into this thing? Now you just answered the question and he says, no, I'm standing. I know what I'm doing. Do you understand?
That's it. And we have to remember the Lord's made us so different. Where men are visual. Before they even get to know us or to know, they're looking on the exterior. So one of their eyes are open. Like there are different visions, there are different insights or sights that takes place. You've got the actual eyes that sees, and then you've got these other parts of us, our intellect or our spirits, our discernment and other things that needs to be open, that needs to see as well. Because you can see somebody physically, or you see some people, they're beautiful on the outside and your spirit is just like, I see you, that you're not a nice person. Mm-hmm. So we've got to have more than one eye opened when we're dealing with love. Not just the natural eye, we have to have that spiritual eye, because if we're going to seek our equal, as someone made mention that we need to be connected with our equal, then we need to discern who's our equal. Because again, men are physical, where we're emotional with how we're looking for somebody to tell us things, that you're beautiful, to be kind. A gentleman can have 2 teeth in his mouth, cross-eyed, but he knows what to say to get that response where we're saying, oh my goodness, he's saying things that I want to hear. Then all of a sudden we feel something fuzzy and warm on the inside, where his appearance, when he looks at us, if we're not the Coca-Cola, some of them, they don't want to come close because they're looking on the exterior. So love, there's so many different aspects of the blindness. So I would just say
that's
that
true. There's levels, isn't there? It's just levels. Sister Jan, did you want to jump in? Thank you, Sister Green. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering, what if you have someone that doesn't tell you all these things, these words, but they do it in actions? Isn't that love just the same?
It also depends on your love language.
Exactly.
Understanding different love languages.
Mm-hmm. That's
And
right.
some people can be satisfied, but we're talking about the general, but then within that, there are people who have their different love language. Some is, affirmation, kindness, gifts, and so forth. So.
Right.
But what that requires then is the partner has to understand that that is the love language that they speak and accept it. But it wouldn't be something you discussed prior to falling in love. You just fall in love with somebody, I guess, and then you discover that this is their love language.
And that's the growing together, the understanding, the communication.
And I do think love is blind. I do think it's blind.
I am all ears.
Because it's temporary, that love, when I said it's blind, while I would think the more mature kind of love seems timeless, like, there's no time to it. The excitement would fade, but then the mature love, the real love, would be peaceful. Just my thought.
Absolutely. Rana, you're all quiet now. You're taking it all in, I know.
Yes, and Vincent got home, so I was just nestling him in.
Oh, okay. Tucking him into bed. Love is blind. So they say. Love is blind. I might start to believe it. But I guess, as somebody said, there's different layers to what that means. And I think that it's subjective, and then there's the, mature level where you handle love differently than somebody maybe that just got married and they're all over each other and he's like, oh my God, what's their problem? But you were the ones there. Is that true as well? Go ahead, Marilyn, Sister Marilyn.
Well, I think that, like you said, okay, so at the beginning, when you are love is blind and you're new, you're excited, and all those things is part of it, right? It's part of what we've come to know, and it's even part of what we expect, because that's how we behave. But as our love matures, I like what Sister Jen says, and it becomes timeless. I mean, all these wonderful things, are factored in. I'm picking up on the different things. So our love language, what does that mean? For some women, having flowers at certain times is very important. For other women, that's not something that their partner, ever thinks to do. And that could become a problem. So you decide, whether or not that is important. I'm just using that as a small example. Or maybe for another woman, my husband or whoever is willing to help me out in the home. And for some people, that could be a problem, and that could be a source of contention or whatever. But again, it's part of what you grow into with, with time. So I do believe that love is blind is something that is very individual, very unique to the two people involved, because I'm choosing to, I'm making that choice to say, I know this about you, but I still love you, and I will continue to do so. I met a lady who said to me, her husband and her had been married for 50 years, and we were all oohing and ahhing. And she said, oh no, I made a commitment at the altar before God and everyone, and I wasn't about to break that commitment. Her husband actually passed away before her, and she was just sharing her story. And I was quite in awe just listening to what she had to say. So for her, divorce was not an option. She was going to live this out until death parted them. And that's exactly what had happened. So again, I'm saying, I do honestly believe that love is blind is an individual thing to each one of us around the table here today, as we're sharing and just discussing.
Mm-hmm.
I like that, Sister Marilyn.
Yeah. Yeah, it is very unique and subjective. It's based on our unique experiences, and I think it's really powerful to even acknowledge that, because there is no right answer. And when you come across, different people in your walk through life, you may be able to relate to somebody who needs to hear your story, because your story is going to empower them. Your story is going to encourage them, because they might look at you and say, well, if you can make it, I can make it as well. Or somebody, who's never ever experienced, I don't know what Sister Elaine or Shauna has experienced, and they cannot relate to what you're saying, and it's madness. But that's okay too, because there is someone. And I think that, as Shauna was alluding to earlier, we go through things in life with purpose, because I don't think we're here vicariously. None of us are. Because if God is saying, before you were, I knew you, right? And he knows the path that we take, and he knows why we are who we are and the way we are. I remember being in a prayer meeting one time, and somebody told me something about my personal personality. And I was like, wow, that's interesting, because God said A, B, and C about me. And I was comforted by that. And I don't have to be anybody else. I can be me. And I'm happy to be me. So whatever experiences we are all speaking of tonight, it's not, oh, this is wrong or this is right. It's just talking. We're just talking. And I love it. And I really want to thank everybody that stopped by. It's been good. Does anybody have any final words, comments, anything that you'd like to share?
I will share from my personal story, and maybe when I say this, it may help someone. Like, along my journey, I've stumbled upon lots of stuff that I didn't like. And in my mind, I'm saying a lot of things I wouldn't say, but I choose to make a commitment. And I think that's what we should learn to do, because none of us is perfect when it comes to love.
Yeah.
We're all created in God's image, and God is love.
Amen.
And this earthly realm we live in has taught us or conditioned our mind to believe in the fairy tale of a perfect love, the book story that we read. And I went into marriage with all these ideals in my head, what it should be. And it wasn't as how I wanted it to be in my head, but I've learned that God's love is perfect. And I choose to commit myself. That's my final word.
Do you know, I've got to respond to you, because thank you so much for sharing that, Sister Jen, because in spite of how each of us are, God's love doesn't wane. That to me is true love, in spite of who I am and what he knows all about me that nobody else knows. Yes. And same to you, same about each of us. None of us are going to go on a date and bring our ugliness. We're not. But God, in spite of, and if that ugliness was to show up as in a blind date, we would run out the door. But God doesn't run out the door.
For he so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son.
Amen.
As you're saying, he knew us, yet he still loved us despite that. And if I could share, in closing with you, my little point about love is blind. When my husband approached me, he asked me to marry him, and I gave him a hard time. I gave him a run for his money, not realizing the love that we would share. So I was blind. Like, there's another part again about being blind, when love is right under your nose and you're just missing it. And I'm so grateful to God that he opened my eyes to see the treasure that was right before me. So the depth of this conversation, it's so deep. There's so many different levels, layers of it where we are missing the fact that someone loves you so dearly, or you're not even conscious how much you need and how much you love the person that God has for you. So we just ask him that he just open our eyes when we need to see and when we don't need to see, if he closes our eyes, so that we will not be too upset about the socks on the ground because it's not there all the time. But he cuts the grass, he does the groceries, blind my eyes and let me be patient with those things and so forth. So just wanted to say.
Amen.
That's beautiful.
Yes. It's definitely beautiful. That's in keeping with my friend that I told you about earlier, who did not see it, but God opened her eyes and he gave her another opportunity with the same person. And then she said yes. So that
Beautiful.
is, yeah, absolutely.
And God's love is blind. God's love is blind for us. Like you said, he will overlook all of our flaws the same way and love us.
Exactly.
I just want to briefly say something about love is blind.
Yes.
That I think when you're in love or attracted to someone, love is easy because we don't focus on the faults. But as time goes by, as the years go by, they become real challenges. And like Sister Jen said, you make a commitment and it's a vow that you make to God, and you have to live it through. You have to work through it and ask God to give you the strength and the patience to go through it, because it's a vow that you have taken before God.
Mm-hmm. Wow. This is getting real deep tonight. Wake up. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Sister Marilyn, did you have anything else to say?
Not really. I mean, I think I've said that, love is blind is unique to each of us that are around the table as we're sharing. And I do believe that. We've all got our own stories and our love language and all of that to make it, what it is. And I just think that, with time, whether we're Christian or non-Christian, our love can grow if we work towards it, if we're committed and we work together as Christians. I like to use the scripture, how can two walk except they agree, right? We find that in the Bible. So that other person needs to love me as much as I love them. And if that is not the case, and I'm trying, I love that love story about Abigail. She had a very ruthless husband, but she did everything that she should do as a wife, and God just took care of it for her. And then she ended up with someone else. So yeah, love is blind, beautiful and unique to each person that is in love.
Wow. A lot of words of wisdom from some amazing women that are here tonight. I appreciate everyone's contribution and taking the time out of your very
God bless.
Higher Ground Gospel Radio. This is High Ground Gospel Radio. Thank you for listening to the program Expressions from the Heart with Sharon Laumen, right here on HGG Radio. Join us next week Saturday at 6 p.m. for another program.